Meyer is my great inspiration, and I hope when I will get to be as young as him, I will have as much spirit and fun in life as he has today. In fact, I wish I had it today already. So, Meyer, please.
Thank you, Hugo.
All yours.
Good evening, all. Thank you. I feel good being here. I want to compliment Shonda on a wonderful talk and all those facts and ideas. They were whirling around in my mind. I think you were terrific and sensational. The only difference is that I don't want a glass of water. Does anybody have a bottle of gin or something like that? Yeah. I much prefer that. And if you had an onion or an olive, that would be great. No? Okay. So, let me tell you what it is that we do. I always try to train myself to say we when I'm talking with our people, because you don't want to be I when you're working with people. It's always going to be we and ours, and it's jointly. So, we recycle a certain type of waste food. And we take this waste food, and I'll tell you what type of waste food. We take this kind of waste food and we recycle it into an animal feed ingredient. So the process is you bid against competitors for the waste that a food plant creates. Every manufacturing process has waste, no matter what it is. And sometimes that waste can be very valuable. And so in food plants that have some grain, bread, cake, cookies, pasta, tortillas, all the snack foods, those are the type of, that is the type of waste food we pick up. But we also pick up peanut skins. Why do you pick up peanut skins? Because they have a certain amount of oil in them. And so the skin itself is a little bit of fiber, but it's amazing the amount of oil that sticks to the peanut skin. So there are all sorts of things you can recycle and have value. It's a matter of looking at it and looking at the economics of it. And so we service, we'll call it servicing a bakery. It's not only bakeries, it's all these different type of food plants. They all have waste. In the old days, I charged them to pick up the waste. And then somebody saw what we were doing, we were making money, they said, hell, I'll pick it up for nothing. Then I had to go to the bakery and say, I'll pay you $10 a ton. And they said, I'll pay you $20 a ton. And that's American business. And so now we have competitors. They've copied us over the years. We were the first and pioneered this concept. And so now we'll go to a bakery and we will bid for their waste food. And we will agree to pay them so much a ton based upon an index. So let's assume we say to them, we're going to pay you $50 a ton for your waste, and for every 1 cent change in a bushel of corn, we're going to give you 20 cents a ton. That's what we actually use, by the way, now. But that index can change based upon how you view the marketplace in the future. And so, and then we say to them, since you're a certain distance, we are going to charge you so much per haul or per trip. And we're going to charge you so much a month because of our expenditure for equipment. And the competitor might offer more per ton for the waste. They may have based upon geography, that is where our plant is located for this bakery versus where the competitor's plant is located. They may have a smaller or larger deduction for freight, charge them for freight. and the competitor may absorb the cost of the equipment they install or part of it or more. So there are these variables when you're bidding. Distance, cost of equipment, cost of transportation, type of waste. If we're picking up something that has very little fat in it and a lot of fiber, it's practically no value. In fact, it's a cost to us because when we sell our finished product, our ingredient that goes into an animal's ration, when we sell that finished product, we call it our finished feed, we state to the buyer, who are animal farmers, we say to them, this will have a minimum of 8% fat. It'll have a maximum of 10 or 11% moisture. It'll have 9% protein. It will not have more than 5% fiber. It will not have more than 5% of ash. So we have minimums that we clear with the Department of Agriculture. And so when we say you're going to have 8% fat, we have to buy the waste product that has a certain amount of fat. If not, we're marked down sharply in terms of the selling price to the farmer. Farmer likes the fat. Why? Why do you like fat? It tastes good. To them, it smells good and more calories. And the farmer wants to give the animal he's raising for sale, he wants to give him more calories, which makes the cow give a little more milk. It enables the pig to grow faster. We have a problem?
No, I'm just sitting here because I'm going to bug you later on.
Okay. And so, and what do we, type of equipment do we install at the source of the raw material? Let's say at the bakery. Most of the time, not all of the time, most of the time, we will install a system which takes an internal container or cart on wheels. These are carts throughout the bakery where they'll put their waste food, the different places where waste is created. At the place where you're actually making bread and you're slicing bread, there's an amazing amount of crumbs. What do they do with the crumbs? That's waste. All those crumbs from slicing, if you're making thousands of loaves a day, that's a fair amount per day. So we will install a tipper, something that takes this internal cart that has the waste in it. Okay? It'll pick it up and dump it into a container that has an opening through which we will put a ram or an auger and push that waste material into our trailer, which is parked at the back of the plant. So you have a trailer, you have an opening obviously for that, and so the waste material is brought to the end of normally back end of the plant, where you have the various trailers docked, and we will push that material into our trailer. That's one type. Another type is what we call a self-compacting box, which has in the big steel box itself a compaction unit, and they will dump the carts themselves into the top or the side of this box, which is a roll-off container. You've seen roll-off trucks. You've seen them carry the normally the waste from a construction site, where they'll pull the box up on top of the trailer. That's another type. Or we'll pick it up in our vans, our truck, and they'll have the waste in large cardboard containers or in large sacks. So depending upon the bakery, how the waste comes out, that's the type of equipment we will install. Then we have to have trailers. You have to have at least two for minimum for an account. When you pull out the filled one, you got to put an empty one back in right away. Otherwise, you have an opening, there's no place to put the waste. And we have to buy tractors And we may have an installation at a bakery that can cost us anywhere from this. I'm talking about the maximum prices, not the average price, but $900,000. We may have to buy 6 trailers, and the inexpensive ones now are $50,000. We used to buy those 2 years ago for $25,000 or $30,000. And we're talking about just the 2-axle, 4-wheel, simple 40-foot trailer. It's gone up that much in price. And so we'll install equipment to receive it. We will then take this waste to our plant. So we have a plant. And all of the waste is dumped onto a large concrete floor. And then it's all mixed together with a huge bucket loader, a type of huge loaders you see working on construction sites with a great big bucket shovel. And so you wouldn't exactly call our process scientific, because there's a guy sitting on this big front loader, and he's taking some of this and taking some of that. And the trick is to mix it the same way you hope every day, because we're putting it now through a process. So he picks this up, he puts it into a large hopper. That's sort of like a large container with screws in the bottom, and that screws it out to going over magnets. We take out the trash metal, and then we put it in a grinding operation. We call it a hog or a hammer mill or different names, and you call it. It chops everything up. And then the material goes into what we call a reel, but it's a process of separating the pieces of trash, paper and plastic primarily, from all the bread and cookies and whatnot. And from there, we put it through a drying process, which in our case is normally a circular tube of 8 feet in diameter. Think of a big steel tube, 60 feet long. The heat goes in one end, and after about 20 minutes under this intense heat, which will average about 500 degrees Fahrenheit, will go in about 1,000, come out about 150 to 200, being this huge revolving drum, kills all the bad bugs. You can store our product for years thereafter, it'll work. And it also brings it down to a moisture level that the farmer will buy. Because we can't sell it with high moisture, because the farmer says to me, Meyer, I can take a hose and get all the water I want from the feed. I want it with only so much moisture, because water was cheap. Well, it used to be cheap. Yeah, relatively. So if you don't have water, it's the most valuable, expensive thing in the world. And so we dry it down to a 10% moisture level and basically make it so it'll keep without any mold or anything bad happening to it. And then we sift it on a large shaking table that has a screen on it, little holes. The right size piece of bakery product falls through the hole. The other ones stay on this table and get recirculated, and we grind it again. We grind it till it fits. That ought to be a motto for business. Grind till it fits. And then when it fits, it goes onto the finished feed floor, which is another large floor, concrete floor, and that's where the finished product goes. And we will sell the product in 25-ton loads. So a truck pulls under on our scale. We have an above the ground scale that's at least 60 feet long. So the tractor and the trailer fit on the scale. And the guy inside the finished feed area, he also has a huge front bucket load, and he puts it in our system, which raises it and then dumps it into the top of the farmer's truck. And we sell the product based upon the price of corn. Just moving my rear end, this gets kind of hard for a while. We sell the product at roughly the price of corn. Why the price of corn? Because the nutritional value of our product is just slightly better than corn. And so the farmer says, why should I pay you the price of corn? I can buy corn. Give me a little bit of a bargain. Why to buy? So we sell it to him at the price, even though it's better than corn nutritionally. It has more calories, greater total digestibility, less moisture, doesn't have to be rolled as you'd have to roll corn for the animals and pack. So we buy it at the best price we can under bidding. Our selling price varies and is fixed. It's varied as the price of corn varies. And so we are normally pricing it either monthly or in some cases weekly, depending upon who the buyer is. Have I explained the business to you? Do you feel you kind of understand it? Let me give you an extreme example of what we are doing in some cases. If any of you have children, you'll know the product I'm talking about. It's called the Uncrustables. It's peanut butter and jelly in bread without crust. Any of you know? Yeah, I got a lot of heads shaking. And it's made by Smuckers. And Smuckers had to start making it first in a plant in Kentucky. We weren't aware of it at that time. And then they 4 years ago, decided to open a plant in near Denver, Longmont, Colorado. We bid on that and we won that. We are now processing over 60,000 tons a year of bread crust. And they tell us we're going to go to about 75,000 tons a year of bread crust. That's 150 million pounds of waste from this one plant. This product sells so well, so they've already feel that they'll expand it one more time, the new plant in Longmont, then they can't go anymore. They believe their market is growing, and so they're going to build a brand new plant in McCall, Alabama, right near Birmingham. And we bid on that and we won that bid. And they're telling us to expect to gear up to process after about 3 years of their operation, 90,000 tons a year, 180 million pounds. And they may go higher. And so that's the largest, but it gives you a sample of what kind of waste exists. And we'll pick up something like that, and we'll service somebody that has 60 tons a year. Maybe 3 or 4 pickups a year, depending upon size and of everything they have. And so we sold about, last year, about a little over 1.3 million tons of our product last year. And price of corn has been high this past year and a half. Well, you know, Sean. And so we're doing very well. And I'm not going to feel guilty about it. We're making a lot of money. UCLA will get part of it. So,
yes.
What's that?
Most of it goes to UCLA.
Most of it will go to UCLA. So for me, the working has other reasons than making money, because I shall give it away because I don't need it, and my wife doesn't need it. And so most of it will go to UCLA, probably. Okay, you're on, Ivo.
Okay, so I can now tell a story to embarrass Meyer a little bit, just like Shonda embarrassed me a little bit. We had a colleague named Bill Ochi who knew Meyer before I knew Meyer. And I was involved in trying to pull a program up for schools in the inner city, which I did at Brown University, where we tried to help people. And he said Meyer actually had endowed an entire school here in Los Angeles, which is actually also named the Luskin School. And he said something that on top, if that wasn't enough, which was really amazing in my mind, he said, Meyer is the smartest business person you will ever meet and that I know. So,
much better.
Got a horrible knee.
And it's hard to believe, but I already know you for like over 10 years also. So we're growing old together, and we've had great fun. And I'm going to ask you a few more questions about your business for the students, and then we're going to have the students ask you questions. So you were an investment analyst. I know a lot more about his background, of course. You were an investment analyst. Then you got into some real business. And how in the world did you have this opinion that I'm going to buy a recycling operation?
Well,
and how was the operation when you bought it?
So the little business that I got involved with was essentially going to go bankrupt. And I knew I had to diversify from this oil well exploration business that this company was doing that didn't know what they were doing. And so I was looking for, how do I buy something without money? Because we had no money. That's a good trick if you can buy something. And those days, when I bought this, the tax rate on the highest tax rate on incremental earnings was 91% federal tax. And the capital gains tax was very low. So through some luck and some friends and whatnot, found a couple of people, different businesses, who wanted to get out of their business, had saved a lot of money in their business. If they took it, they paid 91%. If they sold their business, they'd get credit for it and would be at about like a 25% capital gains basis. So I told them, look, sell the business to me with all your cash. We'll work it out with the lawyers that you get your cash right back. An hour after you signed it, you're going to have the cash back to you. But the cash now is capital gain versus they just took it out as a dividend or as additional compensation. They'd pay that. And then I said, I promise to pay you so much a year for so many years. I don't know how he's going to get that. And if you want to work, I'll pay you what your salary is for a while. So I wanted to learn the business. And so because of that quirk in the tax law, I was able to buy two businesses. One was a beauty school. And I built the beauty school from 1 to 18, called the Maranello Schools of Beauty. And if you ask me even now, what do I know about beauty? Only what I see it, and I see it right over there and up there. I mean, I didn't know there was such a thing as a curling rod versus a perm rod or something like that. I mean, I didn't know anything about it, never did learn much about it. But what I did learn is where the students came from geographically, where our nice ladies came from, our customers. We call them patrons. And I knew here's an area that sustains a school. Well, I'll go over here and I'll build another one, and I won't. And so I quickly learned, and in trucking, there's the concept of a mile and ton. And you have a mathematical concept, least squares, to determine if you have a lot of locations where you should be in terms of how many tons you're picking up, how many miles, what it costs. And so I apply that concept to opening up beauty schools. And was very successful, but I did not like the concept, the values of the people in the business. At the same time, there were these two guys couldn't get along. They had a little tiny business of taking the bread from the supermarket and unwrapping it, having a lot of women who they paid 25 cents an hour, sitting on a big pile of bread, unwrapping it by hand, and then grinding it up with a little cement mixer, tiny little thing, and selling that to a local feed mill. Way back in Los Angeles, you had a lot of dairies right in the city. The area called Cerritos now. That was all dairies in the city. And it's an interesting part of economics, how the cost of land drives out one business and puts others in. Because this city had this huge dairy area. The cost of land became valuable for housing. They drove, all those farmers made a lot of money. They opened bigger farms. They went out towards San Bernardino and Riverside County. A few went up to Arizona. And then they bought bigger farms there. And then eventually the land need took over the dairies. And then they all moved into the San Joaquin Valley and some into southern Idaho, Arizona. And they made a lot more money and bought bigger dairies. Because in the old days, if a dairy had 50 cows, that was a pretty big dairy. Now they got thousands in some of the large dairies. So interesting study. And so these two guys weren't getting along with their little business that was doing, I think the profit was $40,000, $50,000 a year. And last year, we had an EBITDA of 80 million. So that's how it's grown. So I don't know how many.
What year was that when you started?
That was 1962. Remember it well.
Actually, Meyer still owns that particular place.
Yes.
It's the oldest
So that
factory.
little thing, we kept expanding it. So we now own almost a block over there because we kept expanding it and fitting in machinery. And they couldn't produce more than maybe 1 to 2 tons an hour, if that much. Our plants now will do 50 tons an hour. That's the difference. So we built these very contemporary plants that are run by essentially one person, a guy in an air-conditioned room with all the latest electronic instruments for measuring every motor, every revolution of everything, and he essentially runs the operation from his office in the plant. Evo saw that, and that was the oldest plant we have, but we just completed a new one in Mooresville, Indiana, about 30 miles southwest of Indianapolis. So that was the beginning, and
So tell the students how the competition got started.
Someone just saw what we were doing and learned about it, and figured out that we were.
Go back. That you hired somebody.
Oh well.
Or is this too much, too personal?
Yeah.
Okay, we better not put that on.
Anyway,
Okay.
it was easy to realize we were charging the bakery for picking up their waste because it was all going to a landfill. And so I went to the bakery and said, look, at that time, you're paying about $40 or something a ton to go to a landfill, maybe less. I'll charge you half. And then somebody realized we were charging them and we were selling it also. And in those days, our profit margin was like 70% or so. You don't have to go into electronics to make money.
But the important thing that I want to say here is that, so he was an investment analyst and then ran a business. But when he started the business, it's basically was women taking out of a pile of these leftovers.
Yeah.
And when you go there now, he basically invented all the machinery that does this kind of thing today. So how the food gets transported, on a conveyor belt, how it gets heated, how it gets hammered, how it gets reprocessed. All of that basically is the invention of this gentleman here. And I think it's fair to say that the other people in the industry somehow managed
Oh,
to
they all
learn about
copied.
it.
Yeah, in one case, they told us they were able to. I asked this one guy that, because I hired him from a competitor, and I said, "How did you develop?" Oh, he says, "We got one of the truck drivers that delivers, and we paid him some money, and we took his place. And we drove in, and we had cameras, and we took pictures of everything you had, and then it was easy to duplicate what you had." So.
How many factories do you have now?
We are now operating 18, and we're building we're going to start to build the 19th near McAllen, Alabama, and that'll be our biggest plant that we put in over there, because we expect to get this giant amount of waste from Smuckers, and then we'll solicit other food plants within a 200-mile radius, and there are a number of them. And so we are now in the midst of ordering building equipment, and whereas in the very early days, I got something going for a couple of $1 million, then it was $5 million, and it was 10, and then it was 16, and now we'll probably spend $25 million on the new plant, and probably $5 million more for rolling equipment.
Now, since you're in your 90s, I may say, are you thinking about retiring?
I'll be retired soon, but not by myself. I'm 97.
Is it fun?
Yes, it is fun. It is fun. I like competing. I enjoy solving problems. I enjoy building things. I enjoy the people I'm with. It's really fun when we have good years and we give them huge bonuses. And I get to, they're astounded. We also have...
Which you did this week?
What's that?
Did you do this week?
Most of it today. So I'm still glowing from the guys not believing, and...
It's the best day of the year for you.
Yes. And we give smaller bonuses to all of our people, not just the key people. Everyone gets a bonus. I mean, if you're bad, you're not going to be there very long, or you're about to be left. But if you're working for us, you're probably going to get some kind of a bonus. And so I like working with people. I like doing that. And I like the idea of being able to give money away. I enjoy reading, so I guess but I don't think I'd read more than 2 or 3 hours a day. Then what do you do? And
me, you listen to your wife.
My wife said to me, "I've married you for better or worse, but not for lunch." So when the pandemic was bad and there were only 2 of us at home, I made my lunch every day. She never made lunch for me. It was a matter of pride. I was going to make
Now, since you've ratted out your age, may I ask whether you're starting up any new businesses?
Yeah, I'm starting up a new business. Because I can't help not doing it, because it makes so much sense. I really, in a way, don't want to do it, but the part of me that says, here's an opportunity. I've been trained so long to do it. Like I'm just a dog that, you sees a bone, you're going to go after it. And so we are starting a pet food business. Why a pet food business? The product we make, the Stride bakery product, animals really like it. Well, why? Look, it's got bread, it's got cookies, it has pizza, it has some pasta, it has cake, it has snack foods. And so the answer is, what's not to like? And the animal can smell. They have great senses of smell. They can smell something good and sweet and good, and it tastes real good. And we've tried it with some dogs, and they just love it. And so it's recycling to another level. I think they're calling it upcycling now. Is that the expression there? So I'm recycling it, but now I'm going to upcycle what I have to a higher value, because dog owners, most of them are crazy. They pay enormous amounts of money for their dog. And you know, as a farm person, most of the cheapest pet food is good enough. Dog food is good enough. It gives them full nutrition. It doesn't have to come from a special kind of sheep in southwest New Zealand, you know. And so who just told me they were paying the equivalent of $9 a pound. Can you believe it? $9 a pound for their dog food.
How much do you sell your product for? They don't know.
So right now we're getting a high price, and we're selling it for not $1.30. Yeah, $1.30. So,
$9 is more than $1.30. That's going to be on the final.
But even at $3 or $4 or $2, and it's good for the environment. And so we went to UC Davis Veterinarian School and said, design a pet food, a dog food, that's wholly sustainable and good for the environment. And if it's totally vegetarian, we'll market it. So what? We'll market under the concept that the top veterinarians say it's total nutrition, because you can design a veterinarian diet. There are millions of them around the country that get all the protein, all the carbs that you need, all the fat, vitamins and minerals from a vegetarian diet. You know, a protein doesn't have to come from a piece of meat. A protein can come from a bean, a seed. And it's essentially 20 amino acids, the type to make up a human total protein. You get that from food. There are societies that have learned to exist for several thousand years, eating a combination, we'll say, of rice and beans. That's a complete protein diet. And so our concept, so I had to have a concept, totally sustainable dog food, completely good for the environment, and fully nutritious. Well, UC Davis disappointed me, so now we have signed a contract with Kansas State School of Veterinary Medicine. We actually signed something that's supposed to, and we're supporting research for them. It's going to cost us several $100,000, but it's going to research, and I can do it less, but what the hell, it's good. And we're going to design a dog food that's 100% sustainable and 100% totally nutritious. And that'll be our marketing concept. And so that's nice. It's fun. It's something new. And I may die tomorrow, but that's okay. I mean, I'm doing what I think I should do. I'm doing what I believe in. And I'm saying to all of you, try to do that in different ways. Do something you believe in. If it gives you a living, that's enough. Being rich is nice and fun. But I don't even really benefit to know what that really means, because you know how I live. You know a lifestyle.
He has the most beautiful house in all of LA. You're not living like a hermit.
It's designed beautifully. It's not huge. It just has, I just paid for great design. It's mostly glass. We have great views. So you look around and inside the house, and it's mostly, because you see the trees, the mountains, the sky. I mean, what could be nicer to look at? And we were talking, we had dinner, and will you ask some, I don't want to go off in the wrong area, but do you have some more questions?
Why don't we open it up to the students and let them ask questions?
So you've been recycling, food from bakeries.
I have bad theory.
Oh, I'm sorry. So you've been recycling food from bakeries. Now you're 97, and you have another idea of sort of taking that same model but upcycling. And I'm curious if, in the last couple decades that you've been doing this business, have you had other upcycling ideas? Have you tried to transfer the model that you're using for animal feed to taking food from like restaurants or other sources and recycling them into other types of feed or other types of sort of resources?
Early in my life, I had ideas for recycling, but when I looked into it, someone was already doing it. So I had enough expansion in the little field I was. But I initially used to look at possible recycling of medical waste. But I found that there were some people doing it, and it wasn't that large, and I didn't think that I could compete with them. So I do think of other things that we might do. But the obvious one is taking a product we have now, which is really good for animals. Well, all the farmers, we're selling them, over 1 million tons of it to animals, but getting a much better price. And it's good for the environment, because they won't be killing people who are selling meat for dogs, won't be killing as many animals, because we'll be supplying a dog food that doesn't have animals that have been slaughtered. If you have dogs, you don't have to buy the real expensive stuff. You probably can get something really good for less than $1 a pound. Look at the nutritional values, really, and that's what's important. Yeah. Jeremy?
As competitors start to emerge in your industry, how do you maintain your competitive advantage over them?
How do we maintain our competitive advantage over them? Good question, because, well, first of all, I tell our people we have to give good service. We are servicing a bakery that must get rid of its waste. If you're in any business that's service, you've got to try to give the best service. Because if your product is kind of similar, you differentiate yourself a great deal, particularly when it comes time to rebid. And the plant operator says, these guys gave me terrific service, I want to keep them. They're not as much concerned about an extra $1 or $2 that the home office buying agent might get. The plant guy says, I had somebody else. And normally, in the type of business I am, there is lousy service. You're dealing with truck drivers, trucks that break down, plants that break down. And I say to our people, almost no matter what it takes, double time, triple time, take care of the customer first. And then if we make a little less, that happens. So we differentiate ourselves, and they come back by a good service. And we tell them to paint, the equipment is outside, some of it. Tell them paint it once in a while, because no one has a nice plant and they got this old rusty trailer there. It looks lousy. And so if you're dealing with the public or something like that, try to have a nice looking appearance that you're professional. It's important. It makes a huge difference, something minor. Or put them all in uniform so they look like they're part of a upscale organization. And then I put a lot of money back into maintaining our equipment. So our trucks break down less than our competitors because we're willing to keep it up. And so I've put the maintaining the business above profit. And I do that with people. So if you're doing everything right, whatever profit comes, that's what you're entitled to. You're not entitled to more. You're supposed to give them good service, supposed to maintain it, supposed to take care of your people. And then if you don't like what's left over, get out of the business. And we are in a business that is highly volatile because we sell based upon the price of a commodity. And farm commodities really are volatile. So we do our bidding, when I say bidding, to bid for a job, we submit what we're going to pay you, what we're going to do, based on a price that has been around for most of the past 10 years. Not the high price right now. So you look at the last 10 years of our business, $3.50 for a bushel of corn was most of the time. The last year and a half or two, it's $5, $6, $7 a bushel of corn. So I don't bid the business based on I'm going to be getting $6 a bushel. We have computer approaches that tell us what we'll make at $4 a bushel. I bid it making a reasonable low profit at $4 a bushel. If I'm getting $6, I'm going to give some more money to UCLA. And if as a commodity it goes the other way to $4, I'm okay. Not making a great deal, but enough to take care of everybody, keep our equipment up. So above all, keep up the trucks, keep up the machinery. This will get you and the business people. So we hire a new general manager, and he asks me, well, what will my budget be? I say, we have no budget. And he looks at me and he says, how do you run a business on a budget? I say, you're operating a plant. If there's something wrong about safety, you're supposed to fix it immediately and not even make a request immediately to be reversed. Safety comes first, and you're charged with safety. I don't want anybody hurt if we can help it. So you automatically spend that money, we have the money. If a machine breaks down and you need it to go, are you going to wait and put a request and shut everything down? No, I want you to fix that immediately. If you think something needs to be replaced or stored, put in a request for that. And so we're going to give it to you because you're putting in a request because you believe something is about to wear out or break down and you want to have the part. And so there's no budget for something like that. You might go through the year with very few breakdowns in equipment. And I don't want to give you a budget and you say, oh, I've got an extra $1 million, I'm going to spend it anyway. Which is what happens in a lot of companies because that's the way a lot of people are.
Let me also say to that Meyer's business, although the scale is very, very large, the plants themselves are actually simple enough that Meyer understands every single plant as well as the manager does. And if a manager tries to bullshit him, it will take him all of 5 minutes to figure that one out.
And he will be gone because we tell each other, let's be honest with each other. I won't BS you. You don't lie to me. Tell me exactly you made a mistake. We forgive that. We don't forgive deception and lying. That's not forgivable. Dishonesty is not forgivable. Operating within the law, you must do that. And your family comes first. And a lot of them look at me and say, because a lot of bosses I work for insist that if something is wrong and at the same time something with the family and they got to make a choice, you better take care of the business. We tell them, no, you take care of the family. And we want you to be okay and fine and do that. In the long run, it pays off a lot. In the short run, sometimes you're hurt. But when an important guy gets hurt or disease or something, we don't say after 4 weeks, we're not paying you. We just pay them as long as it is because they've given us everything. We know they're going to come back. And and then we have an outstanding retirement program for them. I want every one of our key people to retire with dignity. And so we say, if you will save 10% of your salary, we will match it 100%. You can't beat an investment that makes 100% a year. Guaranteed.
The only problem is you only get it after you're 97 years old.
Right. Thank you. So, but we throw a hook into them. We say, you got to be at least a year, and then it vests 10% a year. So if you work for us a year or two, you're going to only get 10 or 20%. Now, the amount you contribute, obviously, is your own. But the 10% we manage it with, you got to be there another 10 years to get it all. And then we give you 30% of your salary set aside. You don't have to save. So you can have 40% of your salary set aside in the same vesting program. And so the good guys who are with us a long time retire with several $1 million. If you're making $200,000 a year and you're getting 40%, it's $80,000, and you're getting some compounding, not much, because we're very extremely conservative about what we do with employees' money. So these are the approaches we have. So I keep good people, because after a while, they're there for 6-7 years, and they say, if I leave, I lose 30-40%. That's a big chunk of money. But if they don't perform, they know we're going to talk to them and tell them we ought to separate. I mean, so how do we beat our competitors? Good people don't leave us. They like working with equipment that's up to date. Take a truck driver. He loves a truck that's up to date and clean and then right. You put him in something bad and he hates it. And so we it's important to keep the plant clean. Though we look like we're operating with garbage, which we are, we still want to keep it clean. You've seen it. It's relatively clean considering it's a garbage operation. And if you don't know me and you ask me, what do? I say, I'm a garbage collector. And but those are philosophies of doing business if you're in it for the long run. If you're out to squeeze everything, you can for a while, but after a while it catches up with you. You can only run a person so much. You can only take a piece of steel and subject it to stress so long. So if you're looking at a business for long term, it's easy to make the right and good decisions. We were public once, and I withdrew from the SEC because we kept buying our own stock on the market when we had extra money. I was early in the game. I mean, 40, 50 years ago, I was buying some of our stock in every year, a little money, to the point where we had so few share owners that we can go to the SEC and say, we're really not public. And we delisted from the American Stock Exchange. And we're essentially private now. Also from a purely selfish point of view, the amount of stock I had, which wasn't that great in the beginning, is now a huge percentage because I've retired so much stock. And so the truth behind this, feeling in control and wanting to be in control. I needed to be in control because as a young person who had no money, my parents were poor. They were immigrants who didn't get along. I didn't want anybody when I was 60, 65 coming up to me and saying, Luskin, you're out. You're 65, you're through. I hated that thought because I never thought I might be in business for myself, be working with somebody. Well, what do I do then? How much money do I have? And so I always kept thinking, how do I stay in control and not have somebody kick me out when I think I'm still okay? So these are insights into one human being. And we're all individuals. Every one of you comes from a certain background in a certain way, which is going to affect what you're doing. You can take the girl out of the farm. You can't take the farm out of the girl, can you? It's bound. How you were raised, where you were raised, and what's going to help determine what you do, why you do it, who you are. Not that you can't go far, far away from where you are. I mean, you can, but there's something in there that's going to stay and cause certain things you're going to do. That's just pure plain psychology. I mean, the trick is to continue to grow. Your brain is unlimited to what it can do and master and do for you. And so I act in an extremely positive way, but I'm kind of pessimistic about the human being. I don't like what the human beings are doing right now as a whole. I mean, we've gotten too greedy, and we don't care what we do to the planet. We don't care so much what we do to each other, and somehow people rise to power in nations that destroy children and women and others. I mean, it's having lived through. I was in World War II. I was involved in the invasion of Okinawa, so I've seen what war does, and but you have to live your own lives. Next question.
So since you invented your machinery and you seem very sustainable focused, I was curious, over the years, have you made your machinery more energy efficient as you've been expanding to 19 plants?
How efficient is your equipment? Is it better than it used to be?
Good question. It's much bigger. Everything is, the concept is the same. It's a lot more efficient because we've made it so much larger. We've added a few wrinkles. Once we got into the beginning, my first couple of years, that was really the basis of it. But as I say, we've upgraded everything so much larger. We've learned to operate it much better. Now, every single motor goes back into the main control office. And so they're looking at the output of that individual motor. If it gets a little too much, we'll shut it down and check it before it burns itself out. So we've gotten, yes, electronics has enabled us to be more efficient. So we can measure the output in tons of everything that it's doing. We can measure the stress on the motor. And so that part has become more efficient, plus just making everything larger.
The heat energy.
What's that?
What about the heat energy?
Well, we've learned to operate with a little less. Well, we put an LED lighting, obviously, all over. We are very much concerned about energy because that's a major cost. I'll tell you this. We use a lot of natural gas because that's what we use to heat this big rotary drum, the dryer. That's all natural gas burning on one end and it goes to the other end. We use a lot of electricity because we have all these many motors throughout the plant. We use a great deal of diesel fuel for our trucks. So one of the things I did, how does management, if you have good management, if you have smart management, and I'm patting myself for only part of it, not for all of it, just part of it. Because this was a decision that I made, but about 3 or 4 years ago, diesel fuel ranged between $1.50 to $2 a gallon. And we thought, oh, that's not on a pump. That was on the, because I follow the price on the futures market. So I guess the pump maybe was 25, 30 cents more because that's the raw diesel fuel, and natural gas, what they call Henry Hub. It's a location in Louisiana where seems to be the pricing for natural gas. Henry Hub, some of you in the oil gas business. you know. And at that time, it was about one and a half to $2 a million BTUs. 1,000 cubic feet, a million BTUs. And I thought those were really low and acceptable prices. And I've lived through in the past where both of those commodities went sky high. The way at one point in the interest rates 40 years ago went up to 14-15%, then eventually went down to zero. These things happen. So at one point, and I wanted to protect myself from natural gas going that high because we use so much, and we buy a little over a million gallons of diesel fuel a year, 1.2 million. So that's a lot of. And so I went ahead and bought swaps or hedges going way out, 2027, at those prices. And so now,
Wow.
yeah, and so now we're making several $1 million a year just off those swaps. But to me, it was insurance. I just thought I'm not going to be a pig, not being greedy. Greed can really get you in huge trouble. You sense you're being greedy in any area, go back, whatever it is. Know yourself. Know when you're being unreasonable and it doesn't make any sense, and you're exposing yourself far more than you should because you're going to make a lot of money. We'll talk about that in a moment. And so we put those swaps on at that time, and I'm happy to have that kind of price. It was a fair price. It's worked out fantastically well. Didn't expect it to do that. I thought it would go higher, but not. And though we sell a commodity, and we could hedge if we want to, I don't hedge because we cannot make a perfect hedge. We can't assure that what we sell here is going to be the same a year from now. And I don't want to be exposed even a little bit to a highly volatile commodity markets where the only people who make money are the large trading houses in the commodities. Otherwise, the average person always loses money in trading commodities, unless you're hedging. Then it's a perfectly good use for it. Well, that's about it.
I have a question about Elad. I have a question about growth. You mentioned just now about not being greedy. And how did you manage the growth of the business? It sounds like there's always waste, right? So there's always business opportunity out there. So how do you manage the growth of the business in the right way?
At the end of a year or two, I had cash that wasn't needed. We looked for a location to build a new plant because our business is geography or distance plays an important part. When you're transporting a product that has a very low value per pound, transportation costs become very important. And so when you're selling, usually we would be selling a usual product sale. I'm going to think for a moment, let's say $1 a pound or something. And you transport that a long distance, it could cost you 40-50 cents a pound in transportation costs. And so that's why we have all these plants. People say, well, why do you have all these plants? Why don't you build one big plant? Because you couldn't afford to transport waste that has 30-40% water. Don't forget, when we pick up, the average account has in the range of 30 to 35% moisture on average. Some get 40, some have 20, some have less. But you're transporting that water. You're paying to transport that a distance. Then you're paying to dehydrate it. So it's important that you don't travel too far carrying something that you're going to have to dehydrate. It's a cost. And in addition, so you want to be reasonably close to the source of the raw material. And you want to hope to be somewhat close to where the buyers are going to be. Because if you're too far away, the buyer is going to say, I'll only give you so much because I can get corn delivered very quickly, easily. And so a simple business gets to be complex. When you take everything into account in this, what appears to be a very simple business, there's so many little complexities which has taken us years to fully recognize and to absorb and use. And then there's, in any business you run, there are your own value system. And we do certain things because those are my values rather than my profit motive. And above all, I got to live with my values. And I try to do that.
One of the reasons why you know that Meyer and I know one another for a long time, we are like family, is like my wife, he doesn't listen to me. One of the things that I just told him when we came here is that he should not bid so much. He should bid higher prices so he makes more money, because the limiting constraint is not capital for them anymore. It's not even the factories. The limiting constraint is his ability to deal with all the many things at the same time. And in a sense, when you talk about growth, I think that is your biggest challenge. You could expand even further, but it's you who is the limited resource here.
Well, we're limited by, when my son was 50, so it's not quite nepotism, but it is in a way. No, it really isn't. When he's 62 now, he's been with me 12 years, and he started at 50. So he's formed as a human being, did his own way. I didn't want him in the business. But at that point, I wanted to sell the business. I thought, I don't have anybody, and I didn't have anyone that I developed that can take over.
Instead, he doubled it.
What's that?
Instead, you doubled it.
Yes, right. So one of our directors who knew his son said, why don't you hire him? He's got a degree in physics at Davis. He worked in marketing in Silicon Valley. He got a master's from Stanford in business. He's honest. He's hardworking. This director was also a lawyer and said, I like him. I said, he's my son. He says, but you don't have anybody. And I couldn't get a fair price for the business then. Everyone was afraid of it. They didn't know it. People said, I never heard of it. I don't know. No. And right now we talk about recycling, and we talk about, so we're more open to something like this. It isn't a total surprise of what we're doing. But going back 12, 15 years ago, and people never just didn't think of that. So I hired him. I made him work on all the plants as a worker. He had to be on the floor with all the waste food, and he had to go through the process. He knows every plant now better than I do in terms of machinery, because he spent a lot of time there. So he's a replacement, unless he wants to sell it. But I've asked him, I said, David, do you want to operate, or do you want me to sell it? He said, I'd like to operate it. Okay. It would be to my financial benefit to sell it. But I'm at a point, I'm lucky, so fantastically lucky, the money is not as important as my value. The guy wants to operate it, okay. I'll be gone soon. What difference does it make? Whether he runs it into the ground or he does well, I won't be here to know. It won't It won't make any difference, but that's what he wants to do. Part of my value system is that those relationships are more important. I mean, that's really basically important. Your dear friends, they're like family, just family. Your dear friends and the family that you like. You don't have to like all of your family, by the way. So I'm building right now for my not being there. So I'm restructuring the company. So I'm going to get somebody who, I brought him in from the field, a young man, very bright, and he's in our office now, and I discuss every bid with him so he knows how I think. So he'll take care of the buying of the material, which is the most important aspect in this business. Some businesses, it is not that important. You're buying a common product, the same, it's not that important. But in our business, the buying of the raw material is the key aspect of the business. If you buy that wrong, no matter what you do. So I'll have somebody to support him who's going to be the buyer. Just hired somebody a few months ago to be head of all sales. They have a executive VP of sales. I think David wants to stay in the manufacturing part of the business, the processing. Being an engineer and a physicist, that appeals to him a lot. Hiring a few other people to have, because of my age and time. And so that's what we're doing now. Whereas when I was 10 years young, when I was a kid, I felt I can go a long time. I didn't have all that support. I felt I could do it. Probably a mistake, but who does everything right? I mean, if you do a few important things right and do a bunch of little things wrong, that's fine. And as I tell him, your job is to find people who do all these things and you manage them. He gets into the nitty-gritty, being basically the scientist engineer that he is. He likes to get into it. And I said, you've got to keep a different mindset. As much as you might enjoy doing that, you have to try to train and utilize other people and capital. Oh, we tell our people, because we have capital, anytime you see a use of money that'll return to us in some reasonable period of time, 5, 6 years, 3 years, 7 years, 8 years, tell us and we'll invest in it. We'll always have the money, because the point of capital is to make more capital. And the point of capital is to generate. So we encourage our general managers to look for ways of spending money if the return is fast and good enough. We don't tell them, it's just the opposite of what a lot of firms do. And so right now we are accumulating a lot of capital, and it'll change. It will change, and I know it's not going to be this good. And if ever you people are in a world or business where it's that way, accept the fact of what is the history and reality. And so now, let me tell them a couple of stories about reality and history and business. And I gave the commencement talk to the history department several years ago. And the title of my talk was How History Saved My Ass. I said, if you don't let me do that, I won't do it. That's what they want to do. And we had at that time, going way back, I was in a contract drilling business, drilling oil and gas wells for the operator. We were just a contractor. And we had 10 rigs in Libya, biggest contractor in Libya. And I went there. And whereas the Americans didn't befriend the Libyans, I befriended immediately the manager of all of the Libyan help we had. Very intelligent, educated man. And I said, tell me about the history of Libya. Tell me about the politics. We got 10 rigs. What's going on in your country? And he convinced me that there would be a revolution very soon. that to overthrow the existing king, King Idris, and that the new guys coming in hated the Western nations, particularly America. And that's going to happen. I went back to the States, and I just was in the business a short while, and it was full of oil guys, and here was this little new guy who knows nothing about oil. And I tell, I'm going to go look for a buyer for our business, not all of our drilling, but in Libya. They thought I was crazy because we're making all this money and contracting to Esso, the Italian Eni, and other major companies, Shell. So after a year or two, I found a French company that bought all of our rigs in Libya. And within 2 years after that, a guy named Muammar Gaddafi staged a revolution, took over Libya, and nationalized the entire oil industry, kicked out every oil company, took over their properties, bankrupted all of the drillers, took over their drilling rigs completely, kicked them out, had some of them pay ransom money to get out, and we would have been wiped out. And so the lesson is, in that case, learn the history of what the hell you're doing. Learn what went on in the past so you don't duplicate what went on. Learn the background, the financially, history, everything about the background. And so you know your industry. You know hardly anybody does that. And a lot of them make a mistake. What are the mistakes in the past? And I'll come to the second part of that talk was that in 1973-4, there was an embargo by on oil by the Middle East countries. Price of gasoline soared. The price of oil skyrocketed from about $16 a barrel to $40 a barrel then. And the price of drilling equipment, which we were a drilling contractor, the price of drilling equipment skyrocketed. You can sell old junk that's been sitting around in your yard for 15 years. It's just steel, just for that you would give to the junk man to cut up, and we can sell it for 60% of new. And I knew the history of the drilling industry. It went like that, but more like a 20-year swing. And I got out of the drilling business. And within a year, there was a break in the price of oil, went back down again, and no one wanted to drill. There was a surplus of oil. The count of drilling rigs in America went from 5,000 to 500 rigs in the entire country. Everyone almost, and the banks in Texas went broke. Almost all the banks in Texas went broke because they were backing the guys drilling for oil. And so, having studied the industry and realizing we had these swings, and I see this great, and it took 20 years before prices came back to where they were. And so, knowing the history and knowing what you're in and what you're doing is terribly important in everything. And that's why we started in the history department. There's a Luskin Center for History and Policy. The idea is, let's study the past, see if we can help the policies going on right now. Is there something in the past similar to what went on so we can make a better decision now? And I don't know how much of this you would learn in the business school, but by golly, study where you're at and what you're at very much. Know it. You'll be amazed at what you might learn, and it certainly won't hurt you to know with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.